Hey, everybody. One of the biggest transitions in life that many of us make is that time when we leave home and head off to college. It's big for students and it's big for parents, and nobody knows it better than Harlan Cohen. Harlan is the college guru when it comes to this stuff. He's a best selling New York Times author of 7 books. He's been on the Today Show. He has 1.5 million social media followers, and that's because he has heard and seen it all when it comes to the college process. And the thing is, the advice that he gives out is not just for college students when it comes to dealing with rejection and managing expectations and dealing with failure, really applies to all of us. And it's clear that Harlan cares about this topic very much. There's much to be learned from this discussion. So let's get to school with Harlan Cohen. Thanks for jumping on. I wanted to tell you that I know you've been doing this a long time. I came across you this spring when my daughter, then a senior in high school, was getting notices of acceptance and got a ton of great options. Her one reach school, she did not get into, and she was upset. And her mom sent an Instagram video, and it was you speaking to the camera. And she sent it to me and my daughter. And it was you saying, "Hey, kids, I know you're getting notices now. Some of you are not going to get into a school that you think you want to be into. And it's okay. It's okay to be upset. It's okay to process it." And it was, I have to tell you, it was the right message at the right time. And I just really appreciated it because as a parent, it doesn't matter what we say sometimes, but hearing it from someone else is very impactful. So that's how I found you. And I've been devouring your content ever since.
Oh, well, I'm so grateful for that. I do this stuff and I hope it helps. And as just a parent who I have a what do I have? Because our age has changed. So there's
Yes.
like a rhythm to it. So I have 19, 17, and 12. So all boys. And going through this and being a witness to their life changes and struggles, it's uh it's really painful.
Mm.
It's like we had we had a situation where we had a dog that passed away really young and just a couple years ago, and just seeing, especially my youngest, just seeing how sad he
Mhm.
was. And it's like when our kids get sad, sometimes we just can't fix it. So the idea that I could help you or help other parents to console their kids or be another voice, I really, even just talking about it, I really try to process that because whenever anyone helps my kids, man, I'm just like, I'll do anything for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
So it's really nice to hear that, and I'm really happy that we can talk more.
Yeah. It and hearing it from someone else is all is such a trusted source that people rely on. Um, and I have so many questions for you and in your materials. But one of the things I like to understand on this is how did you even get it? How did you become the guru, the guru
Yeah.
on all things college?
Well, I started doing this about 25 years ago, and I've really lived by this philosophy of being wildly curious. And if I'm wildly curious and I can find people who are doing things that I want to do and learn from them, or at least model what my journey will be, then I'll be okay. And it's a wild, it's not a normal way of thinking. So that was really, I mean, that's why there are very few people who do what I do, especially in this space. But it has been the most organic journey. Starting off in college, I had an internship at the Tonight Show with Jay Leno one summer, which is a whole other story of like, I had no business doing that. And I got this internship and it was really fascinating. I met a writer who wrote advice
Mm.
and I thought that was cool. So I went back to Indiana University where I was a senior, and I transferred from Madison to Indiana. And that was where, the seeds of this started because I went to the University of Wisconsin Madison. I thought it was going to be great. I was miserable, didn't make friends.
Mhm.
Girlfriend dumped me. just really, it was a very bumpy social transition. And eventually I found my way, but I decided to transfer. So fast forward to Indiana University days, I got this idea to write this advice column, started to write it, real people started to respond to me. And then I started to find people who could help me because I was kind of a smart ass in the beginning.
Mhm.
You know, I still am. I just am really good at like tempering it. If I my kids are like, "Man, I wish I could talk to you when you were like 21," because right, I'm, you know, I'm still it's still there. But anyway, that was where I started this, and then really quick, uh, bullet points. So this advice column was really popular. I decided I wanted to do this as a living for a living. I decided to self-syndicate this column, so I'd, drive to college newspapers and local newspapers in college towns because that was kind of
Mhm.
the business plan of I can help readers come to their local newspaper to just, engage because they were losing readers.
Mhm.
So anyway, Purdue University, there was a paper, the Journal and Courier. They ran me on the back page. It's like this Purdue Today section, and Purdue saw me and they said, "Hey, do you speak?" And I said, "Sure, every day." And that's how I started speaking. And then I put together a book and then another book and The Naked Roommate and 107 other issues you might run into in college has become like this book that has over 1 million copies in print and
I
hit the
have
New
it
York Times
right here.
bestseller
It's
list.
right
And
here,
yeah.
Harlan.
Oh,
It's
that's
right
great. I
here.
love that you have
Yes.
it.
No, it's
Yeah.
great.
So that's the snowball.
Yeah.
And then it was like, I just continued to do this. And, I focus on, for anyone who doesn't know me, I would say I'm an expert on transition and
Mhm.
navigating change. And I'm really great at working through rejection and adversity and helping people to process really complex emotional situations and distill them down to really simple parts and to be able to find solutions. So, whether it's college or career or dealing with family issues or leadership. So, I do all those things. But what's cool is the framework that I've developed applies so beautifully to that transition where so many students and parents are going through really big, uncomfortable moments.
Yeah. And as when I look at this, because I look at it multiple ways, and one of the ways I look at it as a business, and I think about there is this ongoing need every year for this service, right? And there's, like you said, I don't think there's a lot of people that do it, but every year there's millions of students making this transition,
Yeah.
parents making this transition. So as a business, it does make a lot of sense. And I will probably say this multiple times, but in reviewing this, I keep telling myself these lessons as I read your
Yeah.
book, they apply to the parents, they apply to adults as far as having uncomfortable conversations and getting out of your comfort zone and dealing with rejection. I mean, this isn't just about a high school or college kid, right? I
Yeah.
mean, this applies to all of us throughout our lives. So it really applies to a lot of people, I think.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you see that and pick up on that because the reason that I find the whole college piece so interesting are for two reasons. And one is it's social, emotional, physical, financial, and academic transitions all wrapped up in one. Students who are in a new place surrounded by new people who don't have their foundation. They are doing so many things for the first time, and a lot of these students haven't practiced this. A lot of them are great at getting things right.
Mhm.
And when you're great at getting things right, so you can get into that highly selective school and you're living life and getting things wrong because being an exceptional person and being successful means getting things wrong again and again. And if you're not great at that, and then a parent who has to coach a student through this, and the second part of why I love doing this is because, as a business, because this is what I do. This is my full-time gig. I've been doing this, there's books and then there's coaching.
Mhm.
And the thing that I'm so proud of is I have a coaching program called Best First Year. And it's a college success and coaching community. And we added a community element for parents. In the summer, it's primarily for parents. Lots of students will join and participate. But for parents, it's okay, what are some of the things that happen year after year? How can you stay ahead of the change? How can you be supported? And how can you have the tools and information so you can be the best coach and partner to help your young adult navigate all of these big life changes that are going to continue again and again and again.
So You mentioned your early days of college. I just want to touch on that because you talk about in your
Yeah.
book, you talk about in your videos and your podcast, and you're so good about putting so many resources out there, by the way. But if you could just touch on your own just share your own experience. And I watched a video where you actually talked to your first college roommate who, came back. So Scott,
Wasn't that great?
yeah, it's so great. So if you could just tell the story, I'll just summarize it. You did
Yeah.
not have a good experience with your first roommate, and it's so applicable to even today to students going to
Yeah.
college. And it came full circle because you ended up talking to him many years later.
Yeah, that was wild. I would love to share that. I am curious, Greg, with you, when you with your college transition, was it an easy one? Was it a bumpy one? Did you become best friends with your roommate?
Well, it was okay. I went to community college for 2 years, so I was at home before I went to university, and then when I did, I went into a fraternity, and, it was a big change for me, and what I will say is I came from a small town. I grew up on a dairy farm, and I went to a fraternity where I had people from all walks of life. I will say the one thing that I found was I went in, so I was 20 when I went, so I was a little bit older. Um, but, you know, what I was so worried about is being the small town country bumpkin. And what I found was I learned a lot about them and they learned a lot about me. And people actually resonated with a lot of my small town roots and some of that foundation that I was brought up with. And it ultimately ended up being a strength, not a weakness. And so I
Yeah.
would say it was a big change, but I was overall very positive for me.
Yeah. That's fascinating, and I love that idea of the things we think people are gonna maybe judge or
Uh-huh.
look down on us about are the things that make us so interesting, and I also love the community college
Uh-huh.
angle. Was that something you wanted? Was that why did you choose that
Yeah, I
path?
didn't know what I wanted to do. I came from an environment. I was had older siblings. Only one really went to college. My older sister, and it was kind of a blue collar thing. A lot of people just went to work, went into construction or logging, and so it wasn't really going straight into a 4-year university wasn't mainstream in my community. But I knew I wanted to do something. So I found my way to the community college, kind of stumbled around in that. And I stayed very consistent with that. And then the path came clear to me. So it served its purpose. I got my AA. I knew then wanted to go into broadcasting. And so it really played out like it should. It served its purpose. And I lived at home and I saved money. And I just wasn't quite ready or really knew I didn't even really know what was available to me going into, when graduating from high school.
Right. And then what was and I know that I'll get to my
Sure.
stuff in one
Yeah,
sec,
no.
but I'm just so interested to know, so you were there for 2 years, and
Mhm.
then how did you decide to then make that transition to university?
Yeah. So we had a guest speaker for like a career day that was a local sports legend in Seattle, Tony Ventrella. And I went to that and he talked about his career and I'm like, this is what I want to do. And so, I realized Washington State University had a great broadcasting program. A couple of I did have friends from my hometown that went there. So I went and visited them and I just started putting the pieces together.
Yeah.
And then, 10 years, no, yeah, 8 years later, I ended up working with Tony Ventrella. He ended up hiring me in Seattle, which was a great full circle story, but,
That's
it
wild.
was
Did you stay in touch with him
yeah.
after the visit?
Yes, yeah, yeah. He's
So
passed
you walked up to him?
he's passed away since then, but, he was a mentor of mine for many years. Yeah.
Right.
And an
Right.
inspiration and, there's people come into your lives at certain places, right? And, make an
Right.
indelible mark, and he certainly did for me when he came to that community college and spoke.
That's the coolest thing. Like, that story, and I'm always I'm just, like, naturally curious, and I just love that it was someone. Like, what I was trying to do is to find who was the person,
Mhm.
where was that moment? Because what I find is for students who really find their path, it's usually a person or a place, and for you to put yourself in that environment to have the ability to just explore without the pressure of having to perform, and then to go to something like, was it required for you to see that speaker, or did you go
No,
on
no, I
on
just chose to. It was,
you just
yeah,
went,
I had it in my head like, oh, that might be an interesting career to pursue. And he was coming to the college to speak, so I went to it. And also, I did have my older sister who was going to a 4-year college at that point. Maybe
yeah,
she had just graduated, and that was in my head too. You know that she had
yeah,
done it and she had gone into marketing. So there were other influences, but they all kind of coalesced
yeah.
to guide me in that direction.
Yeah, it's going to stuff,
Yeah,
exploring it, the ability to, like, to talk to, it was Tony, is that right?
yeah,
Is it,
yeah,
to talk to Tony
yeah. I
afterwards,
did.
to, even think that you could stay in touch, and then to continue to reach out, and, a lot of people who are, my age, and maybe, I don't know, I think we're probably close
Mhm.
to similar generation, I'd say, uh it's like they wanna help
Yeah.
people. It's like when someone's really interested in something, I see it, and it's exciting,
Mhm.
and that's something that I think that we really lose sight of, and it's like, even where you go, it's like sometimes going to a place where the expectations are so high, you don't have that room to explore and be curious, and I love your story, and also, I just love the hack of community college
Mhm.
with an understanding, this is my place to be curious and to explore. Because,
Mhm.
like, as the world's changing, the ability to be curious and to talk to people and communicate, I think those are, like, two of the greatest life skills and assets
Mhm.
for students. And then I'll bring it to the roommate one, and the ability to not take rejection personally,
Mhm. That's
and to
hard.
understand it's so hard, and even framing the story. So my college roommate, I think that's where
Yeah.
we wanted
Yeah.
to go with this, and thanks for letting me, like, go down that path,
Sure.
because it's, it's just it's so interesting to me. I mean, I'm not that interesting because I know me, um, but I'm just
Well,
gonna share some things
your
that,
curiosity is coming out, right? And we're having a conversation. That's what we love. I think a lot of us love about podcasts, right? Is we're kind of exploring all of this together. So I appreciate your curiosity too.
yeah, it's great. Um, the whole community college, I'm, like, obsessed with this lately, just with so many of the barriers that are gonna keep so many there's a lot of barriers that are gonna keep a lot of students from having access
Mhm.
to, to colleges and
Mhm.
universities. So, really understanding, and, I do a lot of this, of helping students, and this is part of the leadership piece of, like, how do you go from where you are to where you wanna go? And it's really leapfrogging all of the boxes you need to check and going to the people who are living those experiences. Like, that's the hack, and it's like, that's not so complicated, but, like, we struggle with that. We wanna figure it out on our own,
Mhm.
but it's like, anyway, that's a big piece, but I wanna share with you the roommate piece. So, I got to college, and I'm expecting it to be a, pretty good experience, and the expectation is that my roommate is going to be my friend, and the expectation, it's really a fixed expectation. I'd say it's a requirement, at least in my head. The idea that we're not gonna be friends isn't really an option. So, we get into the situation, and that's a that is not a reasonable expectation for someone who's starting, and is your daughter's starting this year,
Yeah,
right?
this
So she's
year.
gonna be right. So, with roommates, and they don't wanna hear this, and this is why I can say it, and, for sometimes when a mom or dad says it, they're annoying, but, like, your college roommate is someone who is there to share space, to help with the cost of college, and anything beyond coexisting is a bonus, right? And if that's your mindset, and it doesn't mean I can't hope and still have expectations that we can be great friends, but it's the idea that if we're not, something's wrong. And the thing is, if you're not, nothing's wrong. It's just the way it is, because, and this is a foundational principle to how I see the world and offer advice. And this is in my book, Win or Learn.
Mhm.
There's a law of nature, and I refer to it as universal rejection truth in Win or Learn. But the bigger premise something I call the law of rejection. And the law of rejection is an undeniable force of the universe that says not everyone and everything will always respond to me the way I always want.
Mhm.
And for you and me, it's like we get it, man. It's like
Uh-huh.
this is that's my kids aren't going to respond the way I always want. My wife doesn't always respond the way I want. Uh, the world isn't always going to respond the way I want. And this principle is so important because it's foundational to manage change. Because when we're in a situation where we have these very big fixed expectations and we don't get the outcome we want, we tend to think we're the problem or someone else is a problem. But the reality is there's a third option, and it's the law of rejection.
Mhm.
This idea that you could do everything right, say everything right, and you're not always going to get what you want. And it's something that it's the biggest gap in growth mindset. It's the biggest gap I've seen when it comes to college and parenting. And so, I'm obsessed with that. I'll share how that relates to the roommate story, but I didn't want to monopolize the whole
No,
conversation.
that makes a lot of sense because, well, you felt rejected. I mean, I know you're going to get to it, but your roommate eventually moved out and you carried that affected you. You felt rejected by not becoming friends with your first roommate. Was that fair to say?
Yeah, that is 100% one part of it. But it was so I moved in, and anyway, it's not even there wasn't like a big event.
Right.
It wasn't like we had a conflict. It was like the dude, he liked to get high.
Uh-huh.
I later learned that he had a really difficult situation at home where his brother was struggling with mental
Uh-huh.
illness. And he got home, he got to college, and he just wanted to chill out. And I was like this, "Hey, do you want to be my friend? You want to do this? Do you
Yeah.
want to do that? Do you want to do the other thing?" And that is so annoying. Like, that is not what this guy
Yeah.
needed. And he was also just interested in something else. And he moved out a few weeks later. And, it's like I didn't think I did anything wrong, but I was so disappointed because I also I'm like not I'm not a guy who makes friends fast.
Uh-huh.
It's like I refer to myself as a slow burn.
Uh-huh.
And I've got great qualities and I'm a really good guy. But like if I'm rushing a fraternity, like I'm not gonna be the guy who you might stop and be like, hey, he's fun because like I'm not playing sports, I'm not getting wasted. Like I'm observing and I'm funny and introspective, and all those things don't really like make you an instant
Pop out.
uh
Pop out during
right,
rush, right? It doesn't always like
right,
yeah,
like you're
that
not.
those short moments of rush. I know I've been through it. I
Yeah,
know.
it's like
Yeah.
so it's like you're being judged and you're going through this process of being accepted or rejected
Uh-huh.
again and again and again. And I went to a high school where I was really, I don't like to use the word popular, but man, like I left high school, I was on top of the world. I started high school on the bottom.
Uh-huh.
Man, like my journey has been I start on bottom and like a rock bottom, and then I like finish on top. It's like it could be a great movie. It was like I had like a girl. I couldn't believe I had a girlfriend. I was like in this comedy troupe. I was like the star of, or I don't want to say star because I don't. I got more attention than I ever got, more
Mhm.
affirmation, and I left high school feeling like oh my gosh, like I have an identity and people like me. So it's not even it doesn't even have to be at that high of a level. And then I get to college and no one knows me. Uh, I struggle making friends. My roommate moves out. I don't get into the fraternities I want to get into. My girlfriend dumps me. The long distance girlfriend, who was a miracle that I found a girlfriend. I couldn't believe like she could have dated a lot of guys and she wanted to date me. Because I was had this complex, which I've worked through, in the past 5 or 6 years of like feeling enough, like I'm enough. And anyway, that that rejection of not having my people in places, not knowing how to work through those changes. And I really struggled more than I've ever struggled. I'm a light source, and man, I was dark. And eventually I transferred. I had a great second semester towards the
Yeah.
end at Wisconsin. And Greg, this was one of the keys. And I have to write this down because I want to do another video about
Uh-huh.
this. About what happened is I decided to transfer. And when I decided to transfer to Indiana University, because I had friends there, it's a fraternity where I was a legacy. I had places, I had a path. I could visualize what that was. My brothers had been going there since I was 10 years old. But it was it was recognizing at the University of Wisconsin, second semester, I'm leaving. So at this point, Greg, I don't really care. Like if you were on campus and you're one of the people I was meeting, or you were where I lived, like I no longer cared if you liked me or
Right,
not.
yeah, so it gave you some freedom in a way, right?
So much like that idea is, and I did care because I like to explain caring as I didn't care to spend a lot of time or energy because it didn't matter as much. I care. I always care. But because you weren't required to do anything other than exist and you didn't owe me anything, I was able to be much more present and engage in a much different way because there wasn't any requirement from the people who I was talking to. It was like I even pledged a fraternity second semester and I depledged
Mhm.
because I was like, you know what? I don't think I want to be around these people. And it was this total shift. And it was like almost like regenerated. If I was like a video game, it was like,
Yeah,
like, man, I'm back
yeah.
and I'm taking control because I live in a world of options and you don't owe me anything. And then I transferred to IU and it was still hard, but I started to really understand a little bit more of how change works.
Mhm. It's a managing of expectations. I think you reset your expectations, which that's probably where some of that freedom came from. You lowered the
Huge.
expectation, that pressure you're putting on yourself to connect and
Right.
do all these things. So that's certainly part of it, I think.
And even with your daughter, it's like parents have these expectations.
Yeah.
So the student has expectations. Okay, there's so much buildup, there's scarcity with these schools. It's the whole process is, emotional. It's emotionally driven, and the emotions connect with expectations. And the schools are not required to provide any outcome other than providing their classes.
Mhm.
So in terms of like it being a one-sided relationship for at least the business part of the institution, it's like we get everybody excited. There's these expectations, and then parents have these expectations. And then when you pay money for something, there's expectations. And what happens is parents' expectations sometimes don't align with what their kids are going through. And kids' expectations, their student expectations don't align with what they were hoping for. So there's this struggle of like for your daughter, like, and this is where the coaching is so helpful for parents because like no one tells us this stuff.
Right.
Is okay. First, focus on what's your own expectation. I expect this, right? So if my kid doesn't fulfill what my expectation is or meet my expectation, then there's this reaction that could be, judgment or shame or, reach making assumptions. But for parents, it's like you need to put your expectations aside. Like you go in there expecting this to be a year of change. You go in there expecting this to be a year of surprises. You go in there expecting this to be a year of your student experimenting, exploring, and trying to just figure out how to navigate this change.
Mhm.
So it's like, and there are these expectations like, going to class. If your kid's not going to class, a knee jerk reaction could be, you know, we're paying all this money for you to go to class. See, that's a parent focusing on their own expectations
Sure.
first,
Yeah.
right? But then the other part is, hey, when someone says they don't go to class or they're caught not going to class, it's like, hey, I'm just curious, what's going on with that class? So it gives them some time to explain this because their expectation was probably that they're going to go to class.
Mhm.
And so why is it that this is happening and what is your expectation? And then there's that question of like, hey, you know, should I not expect you to go to class all the time? Like I'm just trying to understand what this new, what this new experience is. And then the parent doesn't get in the way and it doesn't create another layer of shame. It's like the kid having to figure out, huh, like what is it that I want and how can I realign my expectations or shift? So that's I know I'm like, I the expectation thing is so big because and I'll just share one more part is when expectations and reality don't align, that's where there's a problem.
Mhm.
The gap between expectation and reality is the problem. And as a student, they have that problem. And then as a parent, you have that problem. But as a parent, I think it's so important to really give your kid room to just try to understand what's the problem, what are your expectations, and if mine are different, maybe we can talk about that too at the right time.
Yeah. You've touched on so much, which is great. And it's there. I mean, we could talk for hours about everything in your book and your
Yeah.
videos. We're talking in late July, so the next 2 months, August and September, there's going to be, you know, thousands and thousands of kids and parents dealing with going off to college for the first time, including my own family. So you spend a lot of time coaching on how to prepare, because that's such a major transit. It's one of the major transitions in your life, right? For
Yeah.
everybody. Um,
Yep.
let's talk about just the drop off and the work that we'll air this and parents will be able to hear it before that drop off happens. um
Yeah.
how should they manage, just some tips on how to manage that going into it for the first time.
Well, there was a parent I met at a conference, and she had the best. She had the best suggestion, and what she did is she dropped her daughter off, or like, moved her daughter in, and gave her like cookie dough, like rolls of cookie dough,
Hmm.
and some trays, and there was a kitchen in the residence hall where they could bake. She can't always do that in your room, but the first day that student baked all these fresh cookies, and it was a great way just to meet people. It's just a fun way to engage. So that's like a really, I just think
A
that's
good idea.
it's just such a warm way. And I know that isn't exactly like, how does a parent prepare? But I think a parent prepares by giving their student who's open and interested in receiving, just things that could help, like
Tools,
just those
yeah.
little things, thinking of like, that the way that parent thought about it, and then the student was willing to do that was really cool. I just did a session. It's called WTF Did My College Freshman Just Text Me?
Yeah.
And it was and actually, if people visit my website, you can, they can access this. It's something that's available to everyone. And there was the drop off part,
Hmm.
this idea of what's the best way to approach that? Do you cry? Do you not cry? Uh, do you stay a long time? Do you not stay too long? One of the rules is if you're the only parent there, it's too long,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Like that's, and someone just sent me a message today. I take notes during this because I'm always reminded.
Sure.
Um, Someone sent me a message saying that they stayed too long,
Mm,
and they were like tips for other parents. That's why I love when other parents can
yeah.
share that. Um, I think asking your student the question, and this speaks to the expectation piece. Hey, what would you want drop off to be? What does move in? What does a perfect move in look like for you? Right?
Yeah.
That's their expectations. And then, their perfect move in is to open the door, and I'll leave, and other people move my stuff in, and then you'll go.
Mhm.
It's like, wait, that's okay. Let me. Do you want to hear my perfect move in now?
Uh,
And it's a little bit different, but then you reach some compromise. But
yeah.
it's understanding like that's what they're feeling, and maybe they're really nervous, maybe they're
Yeah.
anxious, and maybe once you get there, things are going to change because the nerves will settle.
Mm,
But I think it's really important to start with, what is it that you would like? And then I do this thing, and as a parent, you all have your styles, but like Greg, I don't know if you ever do this. I will ask my kids. I'll say, "Hey, um, are you open um, to me sharing, what my perfect drop off would be?"
uh-huh.
So it's not like, "Oh, that's your perfect drop off. Let me tell you mine."
Mm,
And it's that little subtle asking a question that gives them control.
yes. That's great.
It's amazing because I'm gonna tell them anyway. Like,
Right.
I mean,
You're
it's
gonna
not like
work
if
it
they
in
say
there.
no.
Yeah.
If they say no, I'll actually say, um, "Hey, when would be a better time?" Because if my kid isn't available, they're not gonna give me what I want. and as a parent, especially transitioning to this adult relationship with your child, I think those types of questions of like even helping them to set boundaries or respecting boundaries are really important. Some parents will say, "Listen, I'm paying for it," and that becomes this thing of like, "I'm paying for it, so I can do whatever I want."
Uh,
And I find that when parents use that as the way to be able to get what they want, they really jeopardize having a longer term close relationship with their kid.
mhm.
It's a difference between being a gotcha parent and a got your back parent.
Yeah, I love that. I love that phrase.
Yeah.
For their life, right? I mean, that's how we should be looking at it. You have stats on your website. One of them is, 65% of college students report feeling lonely at some point, and I'm sure in that
Yeah.
first semester in particular, that first quarter. Um, the is it fair to expect that there's going to be some loneliness, some homesick feelings? And how do you
I
prepare
would,
for that?
yeah, I mean, these are the stats. And this is where I'm so grateful to have the chance to visit because right now in July, parents are more focused on what do I need to buy?
Uh-huh.
What are the things that we need?
Right.
Right? It's shopping
The
time.
dorm
And
room, yeah,
shopping's
getting it
fun.
ready. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, shopping is
Yeah.
so much
Yeah.
fun. And it's light and it's the opposite of all the crap and stress that has led up to this. So, where is there room to really talk about two-thirds of students feeling lonely
Right.
and homesick?
Right.
Where is the room to talk about uh, that half of students struggle when it comes to their roommates? Three-quarters of students have intense academic pressure. Uh, where is there room to talk about the real issues? And these are things I use data from the American College Health Association. I actually have this. I did a coaching session the other day,
Uh-huh.
and I pulled up some new data, and it's this idea of what's normal. And within the last 12 months, have you had problems or challenges with any of the following? So this is one of the questions,
Uh-huh.
and it goes through academics, career, finances, procrastination, family, intimate relationships, and some of the ones that students had the highest percentage of challenges. Academics, 49.4% of students within the last 12 months had academic challenges. And of that 49.4%, 85.3%, this is on average, caused moderate or high distress.
Uh,
So among the half, the overwhelming majority were really troubled by this. A couple others that were high: procrastination, 74.5% of students, problems procrastinating. And of those, 64.9%, it was really moderate, high stress. So I have ADHD,
uh,
I'm a neurodivergent adult,
uh-huh.
and if you're a student who has a history of procrastination, putting things off, how do you set yourself up for success? And when do you talk about this? And how do you talk about this? Personal appearance was 54% of students struggle with that, and about 58% being intense, having it be really difficult. So I I like data, and it's that question of when do you talk about this and how do you prepare for this? And the number one thing is to acknowledge it exists,
Uh-huh.
you know,
For
but
sure.
where most schools on their website don't publicize, two-thirds of our students feel lonely. Come to this school and spend 90, $100,000 a
Uh-huh.
year to be lonely,
Uh-huh.
right?
Right.
It's like that's not a very good sales slogan, but that's true. So how do you prepare? So one is that this exists, and number two, and this is really with all the coaching, is you have to have a framework. And the framework is what do I want? What makes me uncomfortable? People, places, patience. So it's what do I want? What makes me uncomfortable? People, places, patience. You could use this in your life. I use this in my life. It applies to everything in terms of change and when there's a problem. You know, who are your people? Where are your places? How long will it take to get where you want to go? So if a student is concerned about homesickness or loneliness or has a history, it's really nice to be able to have a plan. And a plan, and this is where when I'm doing the emotional transition coaching. A plan is, okay, what is it that you want as a student or as a parent? What do you hope for? What makes you uncomfortable? Then let's think people, places, patience. So if you're concerned about loneliness, okay, where are your places? Places are where you sweat, play, pray, live, learn, lead, love, and work.
Mhm.
So you want to have places where you can meet people, do things you want to do. You also want to have places where it's open access, where you aren't dependent on someone inviting you or interviewing you, so you know in your head, okay, if I'm feeling lonely, having a rough day, I can go to the gym.
Mhm.
I can do something artistic. I can do something creative. I can volunteer. I can do something with a spiritual organization or something with an international group, something connected to my culture, ethnicity, things that make me feel good. And that can help me to then create the dynamics so I can feel more comfortable. And then I also need to understand that it's gonna take time. You know, it's not gonna be 2 weeks, it might even be 2 months.
Mhm.
It could take a year. It could take a couple years. If anyone's interested in doing a deeper dive, I have this wonderful podcast, from the University of Virginia, and I walked around campus for 2.5 hours, and there's a video piece, and I had no idea who I was gonna meet, and I had this wonderful walk with a student who talked about how hard the first year and a half
Mhm.
was for her, and how grateful she is for her experiences and can't believe she made so many friends.
Yeah.
And I had a parent who came up to me. I was at Indiana University, coincidentally, and this parent came up to me and said, "Hey," it's funny because I tell my wife, I'm like, "I don't think anyone's going to watch this. It's 2.5 hours." I'm like, "I'm just putting it out there because I just think it will help." And this mom came up to me and she's like, "I watched your entire conversation from the University of Virginia." I'm like, "You did?" And she said, "It was so helpful because as a parent, it helped me to really understand the expectations and what I can do." And I said it to all my friends.
Yeah.
So I give you a lot of meat in that
No, that's
answer, but,
great.
like,
I watched some of that video this week and to asking, you're asking these students what was their hardest month, how did they do? And they're like, "Oh, the first month was so hard." But then I found comfort in the fact that they're saying it all worked out, And
yeah,
but the one thing I wanted to touch on, and you talk
yeah,
about this are resources that students have at these colleges for mental health, right? There's
yep,
people to talk to, or resources in academics or tutoring. I mean, there's most of these schools have quite a bit of free resources to utilize. And I think that's
yeah,
important for students to recognize that because it's there, they have to go track it down and use it, but it is there. And particularly with counseling, I think is, mental
yep,
health is such a big issue just, in our community and particularly in making that transition. And you do a good job of pointing that out.
yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, the mental health piece, I mean, I'm very open about my own uh, challenges. Just even as an adult who
Mhm,
is diagnosed almost like maybe 2 years ago with ADHD, I started taking medication in September
mhm.
of this past year, and it's been life changing for me. It's really helped me in the most dramatic way. And I have a therapist who I talk to every few weeks, and it really it was funny. I was at Trader Joe's talking to someone who was she was checking me out, and I asked this person, what's the most exciting thing that happened today? And they were like, they got their housing assignment, and it ends up they were going to college, and they shared a little bit of that. And I was kind of reluctant because I don't want to overshare because it's kind of weird, to be like a counter at Trader Joe's,
Yeah.
and because yes, me, my most exciting moment. And I was like, oh well, I had a great conversation with someone. I'm like, with my therapist, I did this thing where I do remote therapy and I walk and I'll talk while walking, and it just feels so good because it doesn't matter what I talk about because after an hour, I walked for an hour. I walked 3.5 miles. It's great. And she's like, "Oh my gosh, I should do that with my therapist. I do virtual therapy." So it was this idea of like me as an adult male having this connection with a student talking about mental health. And I think it's really important for adults to be very honest
Mhm.
that mental health is something that is part of my routine. I will always have a therapist. My therapist is also like almost a coach in some
Yeah, for
ways.
sure.
It's a checkpoint. Yeah, I don't. So the resources specifically, counseling center. So you go to the counseling center and you see what resources are available, what the wait times are, because with all the cuts that are
Yeah.
happening, because schools are cutting back,
Yes.
you have to really keep an eye out on what resources are available. Are they in person? Are they remote? Is there a cap on the number of visits? If you're already in therapy or have someone who's in your corner, can that person do remote therapy? Are they able to practice over state lines? If not, how do you set yourself up? You can also talk to the person on breaks. When it comes to insurance, uh, this is something that I also it's so important. Schools will often opt students into their health insurance
Right.
plans. And the thing is, you might have great health insurance, and instead of having to pay an extra, $3,000+, whatever that is, you can get a waiver. And the thing is to also make sure, though, if you get a waiver, though, the mental health resources, does your current plan cover those resources, especially if it's in a different state?
Good point.
So just making sure what those differences are, because the default is like, yeah, I'm not going to pay the insurance. Sometimes that insurance can be really great, but this all goes hand in hand. But Greg, the most important thing is a student who needs help needs to want to get help.
Right.
And that's really the most important piece of, I give you permission to struggle. Problems are a gift because problems give us a reason to find our people and find our places and to figure out how to take care of ourselves. A parent or a student who always gets it right doesn't develop the skills that are going to serve them to be incredibly resilient and resourceful.
Yeah. That's right.
Getting it right is a
Well,
curse if you always get
you
it
talk
right.
about reframing failure, right? I mean, you go and
Yeah.
failure is a growth opportunity, and you go off to college or you go into life and you fail at things, you get rejected, and I think for
Yeah.
a lot of these kids, it's the first time they face they struggle in a class or something like that. So, I know you do a lot of coaching on that, and that's again expectations, dealing with failure. It's a big part of it, isn't it?
It's huge. And in the classroom piece, students are really set up to struggle. And when I say set up to struggle, it's more the emotional side, because if you're someone who's a high achiever and you're in a class where it's really difficult and you're around all of these people who are exceptional, you don't have practice not getting, you don't practice failing, you don't practice getting a 50. And I interview students to normalize
Mhm.
this, but it's part of it. And when you struggle, you talk to your professors, you go to the academic advising center, you take advantage of these resources. And I say when, it's really before. Like even over the summer, I tell students, like, if you really want to be successful, then identify those academic resources. And before you even take an exam, study there. Have that be the place you anchor yourself. And if you know everything, great, you can teach there. You could become one of
Yeah.
the tutors, which
Yeah.
would be great.
Yeah.
But chances are you're not, and you want to make that. I talked to a student at the University of Illinois who's like wants to build rocket engines, and I met him as he walked out of the building and had just came from like a tutoring session. So students need to recognize that, and then another piece is there's, how do you measure success? So there's the Gallup Purdue Index, and this was a groundbreaking study that happened 10 years ago, and they tracked over 30,000 graduates and asked them about their lives, and they determined that the measurement of success and fulfillment is not where you go to school. Like there was not a correlation.
Right.
It was, what are you doing and what experiences are you having? And two of the six experiences are related to connecting with your professors,
Mhm.
having meaningful connections. So students who always get things right, they don't oftentimes feel like they need to have that connection with their professors, because professors are there to help you to fix problems. So problems are really helpful, but also for students who are used to getting it right, really using their professors and building meaningful relationships to learn. I tell students, if you get an A in a class and you don't know your professor and they don't know you, you haven't succeeded in that
A
class.
great point. Yeah, they wanna help you too. Those professors wanna
Oh,
help you, right? They have hours for you to come in. You gotta take advantage of it. You make that connection.
yeah. And it's just so different, because especially in a lot of what's happening on these campuses, students are going to be in bigger classrooms. There are going to be fewer teaching assistants because of a lot of the cutbacks and or the the cuts. the the student who advocates for themselves, the student who puts themselves in places where they're going to build relationships, those are the students who are going to leave having the best experience, the most valuable experiences. And that means you can't wait for someone to approach you. You have to be the one. Now, as a parent, you hear this, and it's like, yeah, I want my kids to hear all these things, right? I want them to hear all these things. Here's the thing. Your kid might need to get a 50%
Mm.
on their chem exam to be activated to realize like, oh, I need to do this. So it's like I'm giving you so much information,
Yeah.
but when they have a problem or when there's a challenge, and if they're interested, like if they really want to do well, or if they have something that's happened before, this is where what I'm doing and the resources I have can provide so much value, because as a parent, you're going to know, and it's not going to be like, oh, you're homesick. That's one dude, this one guy. He was telling me how his kid went to this beautiful campus. He was spending like an absurd amount of money, and his kid was struggling. And he's like, "How could you be homesick at this beautiful campus? It's
Yeah.
gorgeous. You know, I was
Yeah.
there."
Right.
So it's like that's not the approach.
Well, the other thing, and we won't go all the way into it, but there's the other resources I want to make sure people know that you cover is the whole college application process, and that whole, I mean, college is a business, and and I've been through it with one daughter. I'll have another daughter, and I've learned things about applications and tours and the scarcity mindset, right? And you go into a lot of that, which I appreciate. So I just want people to know that there's that whole world out there they need to be aware of. And you talked about cutbacks and how these, you have to factor that in to decisions going forward on which college you choose.
Yeah, there's so I start in high school. You know, I actually do work with middle
Mm.
school. I do a lot of events where people will bring me in to do the parent coaching, and I talk to seventh graders, eighth graders. For them, it's about flexing your what muscle. It's, can you get great at going after what you want and not always get the outcome you want? You know, like how do you practice?
Mm.
Because once you get to like eighth, ninth grade, you tend to start limiting yourself because you're worried about what other people are going to think or how that's going to feel. So really starting early. And then when it comes to the whole college piece, I have another program called Happy, Healthy, Almost Stress-Free College Planning
Mm.
for parents and students. And the seeds of so many of the challenges that students face in college, they they are grown much earlier. And this idea of practicing transition and change, this idea of looking at college through the lens of not who wants me, but what do I want?
Mm.
How can I put myself in a place that's going to be the best situation for me, not only socially, emotionally, physically, and academically, but also financially, and recognizing that the cost of a school is not correlated to the value of the education. You know, you just starting off with the community college piece. You know, I look at students who go to community college and then have these vibrant careers as the like that is more impressive to me than any selective school. Genuinely,
Mhm.
because what it tells me is you're someone who is curious. You go after what you want. You figure out how to find the answers, and you don't stop till you get where you want to go. So those life
Yeah.
skills are so key. So for the parents who are like, "Oh, if my kid gets a, C or a D," or for the kid who's like struggles and is a 3.0 student, which like, I was like a 3.0 student. I felt I was like I felt so
Mm.
inferior. And the kids in the middle are brilliant too.
Yeah.
They're brilliant. And nurturing curiosity and not being worried about getting into that particular school, and even developing skills that have value, because there's the whole cost and the merit aid, and a high achieving student, you can get a good amount of money off your college tuition. But if you're someone who develops a real skill that's specialized, that could also be a ticket to be able to get to get a lot of discounts, um, or you transfer at some point. So parents and students, there's like this pressure cooker. And for high school families, I just want you to know it's going to be okay. Like, this is about you. And if you use this framework that I share of what do I want, what makes me uncomfortable, people, places, patients, starting with you, forget the names of the schools. Where are you going to sweat, play, pray, live, learn, lead, love, and work wherever you go? And who are the people who you can turn to and how much access do you have? And again, we go back to community college. When you go to community college, if you look at the people who are teaching there, they're PhDs. These are people who could teach in many different places. Some of them are adjuncts who are also teaching at the more expensive school
Right.
down the street. And you get to have access to them in a smaller setting and benefit in ways that the other students who are paying 10 times, 20 times more don't have. So ownership. So for parents, you have younger kids, and for your rising junior, it's like, forget the stats, forget the names of the schools. Where are you going to put yourself and what experiences do you want to have nurturing those in high school so they can then guide us through our college and through the rest of our lives.
That is such great stuff. And we have touched on like 5% of your content. And
Yeah.
we will leave it there, but I know I will put links into all your materials and people. I mean,
Thank you.
and look, you have classes which are valuable. You have so much content out there that people can find on YouTube, on Instagram. And I will say this, Harlan, your authentic approach just bleeds through you. There's no doubt you care about what you're doing. You care about the students that you're advising. And I really think that's why you've been, such a hit in for all these years. I'll leave it with this. You have a motto, which I love. And it's like, it is, I am going to be okay no matter what. And that applies to
Yeah.
students, that applies to their parents. We have to remember that. And it's a great message. So thank you for doing what you're doing. Thanks for joining. And you're a great resource for people.
Thanks for having me. And if anybody has any questions, you can find me at harlancohen.com. You can find me all over on social media. And I'm grateful to be able to do this. And I want to solve a problem, and I want to help. And to be able to have the opportunity to share this, it's very meaningful. So thanks for giving me the space, and thanks for inviting me here.
You bet. Thanks for being here. If you're enjoying Pay Your Dues, be sure to click follow and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. While you're there, please give a review and a 5-star rating if you could. That support helps the show to grow so we can add more listeners and high quality guests. Thanks for joining us.